Thank you indeed for being here with us. Morning Spring is the program, and quickly let's get to the talking point on the show for today. Yesterday, fourth day in the month of August 2024, Mr. President came out with a presidential broadcast to address the ongoing protest and to elaborate on what his government has been doing in the last 14 months or thereabout. And Nigerians have spoken. Quite a whole lot of people have come out to. Some have said, giving him the thumbs up. Some have said, "Hey, you have not even said anything regarding this protest, and you've not even said anything concerning the brutality that the policemen have actually spelt out to protesters." What do you make of this? We will be discussing this with quite a whole lot of people, about three of them. We just hope time will permit us, human rights activists, and also we look at somebody from the opposition party on the show this morning. Joining us live via Zoom here, we have a civil rights activist, a journalist, and also a human rights activist. Comrade OLOGUN is on the line this morning, and we'll say good morning to you, Comrade OLOGUN.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Okay. Let's look at this. First of all, let's start with the protests that erupted since the 1st of August of this month. What do you make of the protest so far? And using Osun State as a case study, it has been very peaceful here, but up and north, it hasn't been. For you, as a human rights activist, as a civil rights activist, what do you make of the protest thus far?
All right, thank you very much. Let me quickly reiterate the fact once again that the decision to protest against any policy of government that is fundamental right of every citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And for the young people, ditto to even the adults and the old, to decide that they want to speak against policies that are inhuman, policies that are not going well with them, is within the provision of their rights. And I commend them for being true Nigerians in the expression of their opinion and views about issues of policies and how they are governed. Permit me to also use this period to particularly appreciate, thank, and give kudos to the younger generation of activists that we have in Osun. If you notice, apart from giving them moral support and addressing them one time or the other, those of us that you could call veteran activists have not been part of that process per se. So it's been driven by the younger generation of young activists that we have in Osun State, and I must commend their efforts in ensuring that they do not allow politics to break into their ranks and divide them, and also ensuring that the protest has been relatively peaceful in Osun State. But if you ask me to compare what we have witnessed in some part of the Southwest compared to what has been witnessed in the Upper North, you will discover that for me, it is like a twist. What happened in the Southwestern part in 2020 during the NSAS, and the North seems to be a bit peaceful or reliably peaceful. The turnover is the case now. The North is boiling and the South is peaceful. I've been part of the protest in Osun, Oyo, and Lagos states in the last few days that the protest has started, and I can reliably tell you that none of these states have had fatalities. There has not been volatile eruption of emotions compared to what we witnessed in 2020 days of the NSAS. But it speaks to one thing, that some of these so-called protests have to do with politics, and it has to do with tribalism. It has to considerably do with who is occupying the seat of the president. When Muhammadu Buhari was the president of the country, a lot of the people in the North felt that they owe it as an allegiance to protect one of their own. So when the NSAS protests erupted in 2020, the North turned the deaf ear. They pretended as if they were not affected. You hardly can point to one or two protests in the North. But the whole of the South was taken over by hoodlums, by arsonists, and what have you. Now we have a Southerner as governor, and all of a sudden it seems that what is universal, what's affecting everybody, all of a sudden is having a downturn in the South. Even protests aired in Osun or York, Lagos, and all of that. But you can't lay claim to the fact that it has been a sonic. There have not been fatalities like that I'm aware of in any of the states of the Southwest and maybe some other parts of the South. But to the North, they probably have lost all of a sudden that political allegiance to the person in the seat of power. The person is from the South now, not from their tribe. So you can begin to see the underlying factor of tribalism, of sentiment, and of religion when it comes to the issue of civil rights agitation in Nigeria. But this goes to say that we still have a lot of work to do as a nation in ensuring that we are unified beyond political lines, beyond ethnic lines, and beyond religious lines, so that when a voice is raised in the South, it is seen as the voice of the North. When a voice is raised in the North, the South owns it, and they see it as a voice for the nation and not a voice for the tribe. And let me quickly use this opportunity to appeal to those who are leading the protests in Abuja and some other parts of the North, that Nigeria belongs to us all. If we are crying of deficit in infrastructure, we cannot afford to continue to destroy infrastructures put in place by governments, all in the name of protest, all in the name of registering our anger against bad governance, against hunger, whether we like it or not. All these infrastructures that gets destroyed, the money that we are claiming we do not have, the money that the government will have used for other things to benefit the people of the state and the country at large, will be the same money that will be used to replace some of these infrastructures that have been carted away, stolen, or destroyed, as the case may be. That is even if it is possible to have them restored. Lagos has not, they've not recovered from what transpired in 2020. You will recall that that DNA center was burnt down. Lagos State has not recovered from it. They've not been able to have it rebuilt till now. So I appeal to our brothers, friends, comrades, and fellow Nigerians in the North that in the course of registering our anger against bad governance and hunger, we must ensure that public infrastructures are not tampered with and destroyed.
All right, Comrade, just as you have appealed and you have reiterated at this point in time, during the president's broadcast yesterday, he has said no more protests. But as of yesterday, we still found that in some states, they still went ahead with this protest. Is it not at the peril of anybody who goes out at this period to say we are still protesting?
Let me say this fundamentally, that it's not within the rights of Mr. President to give an order for a protest to end.
But looking at destructions and killings that is going on in the North, Comrade.
Direct. He can only appeal. As president of the nation, he has no power. There's no part of the constitution that empowers him to direct protests to stop. He can only appeal to the people, appeal to their senses, speak to those who can speak to some other people to ensure that the protest is brought to bay. But to say he's directing that protest should be stopped forthwith, that is beyond him. He does not possess such power. So one would have thought that perhaps the protest will have succeeded by the presidential broadcast yesterday. But I must tell you that as it is for me, it's not new, because I think since the president took over, the only speech that has been inspiring for me was the speech he delivered on May 29, even which was led by the undue removal of some. Every other speech delivered by the president has been uninspiring, has failed to address policy issues, and has failed to address the yearnings of Nigeria. So yesterday's speech was not an exception. The presidential broadcast yesterday was below par. It was unexpected. For me, it does not show empathy, and it's simply a reiteration of the same rhetorics that the president and his handlers has dished out to Nigerians. I would have expected that the president's speech today will speak to very critical policy issues, which none was found. I would have thought that the president will take one by one the demands put forward by the protesters to say, oh, I saw this as part of your demands. We can do this, we cannot do this. And you tell us Nigerians why this cannot be done, or why this demand cannot be met at the moment, but within a precise period of time, we can meet this demand or appeal that this other demand can never be met, and this is the reasons. But for you to just pack up repetitions and rhetorics into what you call the president, there's nothing the president said yesterday that was new. They are the same lines of thought, the same, I beg to use the word lines, the same rhetoric, same words that the president has spoken either directly, personally, or through his aides, they are the same things that were packed and jam-packed into that speech. So for me, that speech lacks coordination. That speech was uninspiring, and it fails to address very critical policy issues and the demand of the protesters, just as much as it fails to identify and read out the failure of the security agencies in professional handling of protests.
All right, Comrade Ologun, we talking about the presidential broadcast that was had yesterday. We crave your indulgence to take on this video, an excerpt of that particular address in 1 or 2 minutes, and we'll be back for more conversations.
My fellow Nigerians, I speak to you today with a heavy heart and sense of responsibility, aware of the turmoil and violent protests unleashed in some of our states. Notably, among the protesters were young Nigerians who desired a better and more progressive country where their dreams, hope, and personal aspiration will be fulfilled. I am especially pained by the loss of lives in Borno, Jigawa, Kano, Kaduna, and other states, the destruction of facilities in some states, and the wanton looting of supermarkets and shops, contrary to the promise of protest organizers that the protests will be peaceful across the country. The destruction of properties set us back as a nation, as scarce resources will be again used to restore them. I commiserate with the families and relations of those who have died in the protests. We must stop further bloodshed, violence, and destruction. As the president of this country, I must ensure public order in line with the constitutional oath to protect the lives and property of every citizen. Our government will not stand idly by and allow a few with a clear political agenda to tear this nation apart. Under the circumstances, I hereby enjoin protesters and the organizers to suspend any further protest and create room for dialogue, which I have always acceded to at the slightest opportunity. Nigeria requires all hands on deck and need
all right, that was President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday, August 4, at the nationwide broadcast at 7 o'clock a.m. all across the nation to address the demand of protesters. And Comrade Ayologun, if you listened to the president in the small excerpt that we played, he said that he made mention of this protest having a political undertone. And he said as a president, he is there to ensure public order. And he enjoined protesters not to go out to protest anymore, to demonstrate anymore.
Yeah, you are right. Those were the words of the president, as I'm seen and heard from that excerpt that you played. And that is why I took it personal. Well, your colleague said the president directed. He has no such power, and I'm sure he's aware of. So what he simply did in that speech is to enjoin protesters and the organizers to shelve the protest, because I'm sure that he's aware that he has no such power to direct that protests should be stopped. It is the fundamental right of the people, which is inalienable and cannot be taken away from them. But if you look at the early part of that excerpt that you played, the president claimed in that speech that he understands the yearnings and the aspiration of young people and the kind of Nigeria that they expect and that they want to grow into. But he failed, while identifying with the young people, to tell them what he intends to do or what his government is doing to ensure that these young people have the nation that they are proud of.
Comrade Ologun, in his address yesterday, he addressed the youth and education initiatives that his government has rolled out and is rolling out and will roll out to engage the youths. He also talked about the creation of the Consumer Credit Corporation to help Nigerians acquire essential products without immediate cash payment. He said they were securing $620 million under the Digital and Creative Enterprises IDOWU program to create millions of IT and technical jobs. He spoke on agricultural and food production support in the country. He talked on the social and economic support programs that his government is rolling out. He talked about the labor and wage reforms. I mean, it seems like Mr. President touched on some of the things that you are accusing him of not speaking on.
You are getting it wrong. Nigeria is a cosmopolitan country where you have people of different values, people of different races, and people of different standing in the society. One of the problems that the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu has failed to realize, or that has bedeviled the administration, is the fact that that administration has been over time elite-centric. Elite-centric in the sense that most of the focus of the administration, most of the policies of the administration has been much more focused on the elites. He talked about giving student loans. He talked about consumer protection rights. He talked about the scheme by which people can acquire properties and acquire also utensils and other items without paying in the immediate. Tell me, as an ordinary Nigerian that is aware of what the street look like, which of those policies of government reeled out concerns an ordinary or can an ordinary person in Oluwode market or in Igbono market, in Ayepe and in Odiomu? How much of these policies that Mr. President has touched on, how much of it can they be beneficiaries of? Look, it's just like when you say you are rolling out palliatives. Look at the percentage of the major palliative that the federal government and state government have claimed to have released, and tell me what is the commensurate impact of it on the ordinary citizens. So for whatever policies is intended by any government, for whatever policies is driven by any government, that does not directly affect the life of every citizen agreeably or aggregately, such policies is simply elite-centric and will not achieve its eventual goal. And that is why we keep saying that the reason why we are on our knees as a nation now is by that unwholesome and horribly announced removal of subsidy. Because fuel is a product that affects everyone, irrespective of your class. It affects transportation, it affects schools, it affects what have you. So these are issues that I expect that the president will have spoken to. So when the president said initially that he identifies the dream of the young persons, he knows that they want a country that is better than this and that they can relate with. The question would be, how many of his policies impact directly on the life of those young people? How many of our young people do we have in schools as we speak today? So how many of our students are in the educational facilities that will benefit from student loan scheme? How many of them will benefit from the consumer protection rights that you are talking about? When we have thousands and millions of them that are in garages, that are in motor parks, that are in farmlands across the hinterlands of the country. So it's not just enough to reel out policies, it is the impact of the policies that is used in measuring the achievement of such policies.
All right, let's move up to the protest. How do you react to what is going on up north, where some of the protesters are calling on the military to take over? We could see them waving Russian flags and calling on President Putin to, come to their rescue. At some point, some people down south were lost. What has Putin or Russia got to do with this protest? But up north, it seems like something else is going on that we do not understand. How do you react to this?
What is going on in the north is both political and an explanation and a broad intent of those who are not just political, but this is what we call the northern hegemony. Let me break it down. And that is why I appreciate the fact that the president in his speech identified that there are sponsors on the ground that are simply political. Don't forget that before this time, the North have always been accused, I use the word accusation, that the North is not interested in yielding power. At the time we were hearing of the Sokoto Caliphate, they are born to rule and all of that. In fact, that's one of the things that affected the PDP as an opposition party up till now. At the time that it has been a consensus that after the 8 years of Buhari, power should shift to the south. The party still made the mistake of allowing a northerner to clinch his presidential ticket after the expiration of an 8-year term of another northerner. So there is this mentality that has over time been an accusation on the North, that they find it difficult to yield power to other zones of the country, that they are power drunk. So what you are witnessing in the North, those that are flouting the Russian flag, calling on Putin and the military to take over, is not just political. Where there are those who are playing that card politically, others are doing such, believing that if power should change hands, if power should go back, I mean, if the military should take over, there's a likelihood that the person that will lead the coup, the TAR, as the case may be, will be a northerner, and power will return to the North. And this is why we keep saying this, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in ensuring that every Nigerian realizes first and foremost that you are a Nigerian and not a Southerner and not a Northerner. So some of those young people that you see shouting on Putin to come in, shouting on the military to take over, in Yoruba Palace will say, Rumitonjo, Onilu Embelabe Omi. Those ones are only the face of the struggle. Those ones are only the face of the agenda. But I can confirm to you that there are strong politicians and ethnic bigots in the North that are flaming the embers of this unity just because they believe that the South has no reason to have power. For them, in their thinking and mentality, political power must be that of the North exclusively and not otherwise. And I hope that the president will understand the import of this and deal decisively. That call is a call to treason. That call is a call to the breaking of the entity called Nigeria. So they must carry out a deep investigation to know who and who is responsible for the sponsors of such anti-nation agenda and ensure that their places are put up forward and they are made to face the wrath of the law, because that they are calling for is simply treasonable by the standard of the constitution of this country as it stands today.
All right, Tunde.
All right, Comrade, before we allow you take about this morning, there's been condemnations from left and right, center. We've heard former vice president and the presidential candidates of the People's Democratic Party in the 2023 general election. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has spoken. We've heard quite a whole lot of them. I listened to, I read something from Professor Yemi Farumbi, and so many people have come out to say their opinion that the broadcast by Mr. President is shallow, and it hasn't actually, just as you two have rightly said, it didn't actually touch on the need, need of Nigerians at this point in time. But some have actually said, why don't we just give him time? He's less than 2 years on that on the throne, as we always joke about. Shouldn't he have more time to put things right, looking at the state at which he met the economy when he got into power?
Let me tell you, I am not one of such Nigerians that are in a haste to see the rebirth of a nation. The level at which we are is a cumulative destruction that has taken place over the years. So you don't expect that you wake up and you sleep at night and you wake up the following morning to a Nigeria that looks like a United Kingdom or an America. It's going to take a process. The destruction of Nigeria took a process. The restoration of it will take another process. So I join my voice with those that believe that there are necessary actions, there are very tough decisions that needs to be taken for us to gradually start getting it right as a nation. But notwithstanding, Yorubas have this saying that that is to say that if the next day will be glorious, you will begin to see signs of it from the day you are in. The failure of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that most of his policies, let me not say all, most of his policies are too futuristic. Most of his plans are too futuristic. And as a leader and a leadership expert, I know for sure that when you are leading the people or when you are having a reform in an organization, there are 3 indices that you must not fail to put in place. There must be immediate measures to ensure that things get better. There must be indicators that within a short while, things will get better. Before you now talk of the long-term plan that could take years, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should realize that as it stands today, what he has is a 4-year tenure. I don't know if he will be elected. That is the decision of Nigerians to be taken in 2027. So if you have 4 years of an administration and you are expected to lay another foundation or to lay a good foundation for the country, and we are counting down to your second year, and things are getting harder rather than getting soft, and they are not looking like there is hope for ordinary people, then there is a lot that needs to be questioned. So that's actually where the Tinubu administration is getting it wrong. Most of the policies that is putting in place are futuristic. They are things that within the next 10, 15 years, there's the likelihood that Nigerians will begin to feel the impact. And we can say, oh, thank God we had the Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But we cannot, the Bible will say, that means, a dog meat smoked is sweet. But before it will get smoked, what will the people eat? So as much as you are making long-term plans, there must be immediate measures that touch and impact on the life of an average Nigerian, so that while they are holding up to the hope of a brighter future, they can begin to have relief in the immediate. And that is why Bola Ahmed Tinubu is getting it wrong. And I hope that going forward, he will rejig his media team, especially those who are writing his speech, so that from going forward, speeches coming from the president will show more of empathy and direction rather than shallow delivery of speeches and accumulation of rhetorics.
Okay.
All right, Comrade. Now, you have said that the policies put in place by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is futuristic, and he has to put in place short-term measures so that the people do not die before they witness, the future policies manifest the fruits. But then, is that not what the palliatives are for? Although a lot of people have condemned the palliatives, saying that people will not prosper, people will not, hunger will not die with just palliatives. You spoke about putting in place short measures. If not palliatives, what are the other measures that you think will trickle down to every Nigerian so that people can actually have some respite before the futuristic plans begin to materialize?
No nation prospers by the leadership of that country giving food to the hungry. No nation prospers that way. What you do is to put measures in place for people to be able to grow what they would feed on. And we are not politically matured enough for some of these so-called palliatives to get around. I am a Nigerian, and it's been a year plus now that palliatives have been given out. I have not received a grain of rice, let alone 1,000 naira in my account. So I've never been a beneficiary of all of the palliative measures that the federal government has given. That simply means that I cannot fall into categories of millions of Nigerians that have not gotten any benefit.
You are not classified as one of the poorest of the poor. So
I'm a poor man. I don't know how you are measuring it, but I'm not a poor man. There are only two defines in Nigeria. You are either rich or poor. So if I'm not rich, I'm poor. And so if I've not been a beneficiary of the palliative, it means that millions of Nigerians are also not beneficiaries. So what immediate measures need to be put in place are simple. I understand that a country should not throw its borders open for infiltration of product and whatever. But in our reality in Nigeria of today, the president needs to throw open the borders so that we can have food items, clothing items, vehicles, and what have you come into the country so that there can be competition in prices, and automatically price of goods will come down. A vehicle I bought for 1.7 million naira about 4 years ago, when I decided to put it out for market, people, in fact, I was doing what Nigerians call shakongbadi for people that are offering 4 million. For a vehicle I bought for 1.7 million, I have used over a 4-year period, which has deteriorated. That tells you the high rate of inflation. So one of the immediate measures the president needs to do is to ensure that the borders are temporarily thrown open for goods, services, and what have you to come into the country to make cost of product and food items competitive. That's number one. Number two, there is no way you can talk about agricultural benefit or agricultural prosperity when the people are not secured. One of the reasons why food is this costly in Nigeria is because that those who are supposed to do the farming to make the product available are not even safe on their farms. So if the president and the presidency are to be serious in their drive to bring down the cost of food, they must first of all ensure that farm settlements and farmers have access to their farm without fear of being kidnapped or ransom. They must ensure that the farmers can access the farmland without fear of being killed or maimed, without fear of elders coming in to chase them out of their farm. So it begins with adequate security. Once we have security, farmers can go back to farm, till the land, and once we have multiple products, the prices will definitely crash down. The third thing that needs to be done in the immediate is to provide palliatives, not the kind of palliative they are giving now in terms of grains of rice and what have you. Palliatives in the reduction of cost of education. Bring down through whatever means how the amount of money students have to pay in higher institution. Making primary and secondary education free. This in itself will benefit the entirety of Nigerians, and not when you give tons and trailers of rice to a state and the governor decides to take it to himself and rebrand it for the benefit of his political party members of upcoming election. These are immediate measures that probably the president can consider in ensuring that while we hold on to the hope of a better future, we can have a presence, and we can have an immediate relief to the pains and the hunger that we are all going through.
All right, Comrade, thank you. You've taken us to that level at which I actually wanted to ask you before we allow you go this morning. Agriculture. We know that with the spate of insecurity, it has actually driven farmers off their lands. But the level at which oil is, our dependence is on oil. Shouldn't we go back fully if government puts all majorly their resources into agriculture? Wouldn't Nigeria be good to go? What do you make of that?
There is a time, or there was a time in the history of this country,
yes,
that while the oil was booming, each region was allowed to thrive on its area of competence and comparative advantage.
Yes, sir.
For us in the Southwest, our area of competitive advantage was agriculture. The cocoa house that you, the airport hotels that you have, the premier hotel you have in Ibadan, and many other investments were products of money made by government in the region through agriculture, even though there was oil. So what the country needs to do is to go back to looking at the comparative advantage that each state and region has and invest in it. What we grow in Oyo may not grow in Lagos because Lagos is a waterlogged city. What we grow in Oyo may not grow in some part of Kogi because those are dry land, so to say. So what we need to do is there, but it's not sustainable any longer. It's not enough to pay our bills. So what we need to do is for the federal government to look at the comparative advantage and benefits of each state or each region, as the case may be, and help those regions and those states to invest in that sector where they have comparative advantage to the benefit of the people. Number two is to further delineate the control, unnecessary control of resources under the ground, which the federal government is sitting on. I don't know why Osho State should have gold and other natural resources and you cannot access it or build it, use it for the benefit of the people. Why you have to wait on the federal government. So we need to look at comparative advantage of each state and region to ensure that they can make enough money comparatively will be augmented with the money being made from the oil for a prosperous state, a prosperous region, and a prosperous nation that we all desire.
All right.
I'd like to
Comrade
thank you, especially Comrade Ologun, for your time. You take your submission this morning on the topic of discourse. We appreciate your time. Have yourself a productive day.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a great day.
All right, that was Comrade Ologun, a civil rights activist and a public affairs analyst, speaking to the national broadcast by Mr. President yesterday. And also he has been able to say that some of Mr. President's policies are futuristic. Right now, we'll go for another break. We will be speaking to a major stakeholder in the People's Democratic Party, especially reacting to the broadcast by Mr. President yesterday and what he makes of the protest so far. Morning Spring, we'll be right back. Do not go anywhere.